Microsoft just announced a bunch of updates coming to Game Pass. You would think with Microsoft closing the acquisition of Bethesda or ZeniMax last week that the news might slow down. Maybe take a week off, maybe go on spring break, but that is not the case. Microsoft dropped a bunch of news today, and it's all really related to Game Pass, and so there's just a lot of good stuff coming to Game Pass, increasing that value that Microsoft is trying to prove that Game Pass, which is software as a service, really is the future for the company. So what they announced today is that they're bringing FPS Boost, which is their technology to take older titles and take them anywhere from like 30 all the way up to 120 frames per second, depending on the title. But at minimum, it's doubling the frame rate of some of those classic games that you have played before. And this week, no surprise, Microsoft is updating a lot of the Bethesda titles with FPS Boost. They announced that Dishonored Definitive Edition, Skyrim is being updated, Fallout 4, Fallout 76, and Prey, all getting the FPS like confetti drizzle stuff, whatever you want to call it, and it's now going to be enabled. Now, keep in mind that you do need to go in and enable this functionality. It was released with the last update for the dashboard that brought the toggles inside of the system settings that allowed you to turn this functionality off and on. This is also where you can also turn on auto HDR. So keep that in mind, that maybe if it doesn't look as good as you thought it would, make sure that everything is checked as you would expect so that you're getting the improved frame rate. So Prey is a really good one to go. Actually, even Fault, like they're all honestly pretty good titles. Other things that are coming, Undertale is also going to be coming to Xbox Game Pass, but I think the bigger one here is Outriders. Now, this demo came out a couple days ago, or was it last week? I can't even remember. Time is a flat circle at this point. But Outriders, which is launching, I believe, April 1st or next month, whenever it is going to be on Game Pass on day one. This is a really big win, particularly because this is a third-party title that Microsoft is now going to be launching on Game Pass. Yes, we're pretty much used to first-party titles always launching on Game Pass, but the more third-party titles Microsoft can get into the platform, the better. Now, it's a really interesting observation, but I'd love to know the business side of this, in that Microsoft obviously makes some sort of pitch to these people, and they say, yeah, we'll do that. I'm sure there's some money on the table because they're going to be losing sales from people who are in Game Pass like myself who will go play it rather than going outright and buying it. There's going to be an interesting dynamic going forward about how these titles launch and how Microsoft compensates and everything, the business agreements, particularly not necessarily older titles that have, are 6 months old or something like that. A lot of times we see with the EA Play stuff, but I'm talking brand new, fresh titles where they are truly losing sales to Game Pass. Microsoft has to make a pretty lucrative pitch to get companies to do that, and clearly they've done it here with Outriders, and more than likely Microsoft now has the data to support such a model of doing it this way. So interesting things to be keeping out for. Other things that are happening are the headset reviews. Mine should be here this week, are now out, and across the board, it sounds like everybody's saying, hey, this is a great value. Like that, like nobody's denying that. There are some minor finicky issues potentially related to mic. The more concerning one for me is some reviewers have said, hey, the audio sounds a little muddied. We'll find out this week when I get mine, and I will be doing a much longer term review, probably two weeks to a month before I do like a proper write-up of the headset. Because, I mean, if I'm not doing it with the embargo, might as well take time to do it proper and do it over the long haul. Anyways, I'm not discounting anybody who has reviewed it. I don't know, given the opportunity, why not? So anyways, those should be shipping here. Mine officially says it's arriving on the 18th, which honestly is a bit of a disappointment because it's coming out on the 16th and I pre-ordered it. So why am I not getting it on the 16th? But anyways, so mine should be here this week and I'm super pumped about that. So another little awkward thing that happened today is Stadia, the other competing streaming service to Game Pass effectively, or Microsoft's cloud gaming, retweeted a Doom tweet. Now, if you don't understand why I find this kind of hilarious, is because Doom is owned by Bethesda, which is now owned by Microsoft. So they're promoting effectively a Microsoft title, which kind of brings you back down to earth that, while we've talked about Microsoft honoring their contracts and doing everything else, if there is one particular platform that I could see Microsoft going aggressively after to not let them use their newfound IP, it would be Stadia. Microsoft has said that, hey, they often look at like Facebook and Amazon as the true competitors for the long tail, not necessarily like tomorrow. That's obviously PlayStation, what Sony is doing, because they've got a good product over there. But the long tail is going to be streaming, and Stadia plays in that arena, and Microsoft obviously doesn't want to support what they think is their long-tailed future. So Will Microsoft pull content from Stadia? That's a really interesting question. Now, granted, they're going to have contracts. So if they would, then they'd have to break those contracts, and that's going to come at a cost. But right now, Microsoft and Google are like, I wouldn't call them enemies, but they're definitely not sitting on good ground. And you might be wondering why. Well, last week, Brad Smith, the head of Microsoft's legal counsel, went to the government and said, hey, Google's kind of a monopoly. And Google, as we can imagine, wasn't too happy about that. And so Google actually put out this really gnarly blog post attacking Microsoft about supporting journalism. And then Google goes in and says, hey, Microsoft's a terrible company because of the Exchange vulnerability and SolarWinds. Now, in my opinion, that was a distraction from Google. Like the headline of Google versus antitrust or Google versus small town newspaper isn't nearly as bad or as good for Google as Google versus Microsoft is what they want in the headlines, not Google versus small town newspaper. Anyway, so Google and Microsoft aren't exactly sitting on friendly turfs right now. And there's also the other interesting side where Google apps, Microsoft wants to bring Google apps over to Windows, but we don't really know how that's going to shake out now with all this antitrust stuff because the antitrust ramifications are massive for Google, not so much for Microsoft, at least not right now. So anyways, that's a big divergence from the idea of Microsoft and not wanting to support Stadia because long-tailed, they wouldn't want that to happen because obvious reasons Microsoft wants to own the streaming platform worse, and which Microsoft is going just incredibly aggressive here, which is really interesting to watch because, in my opinion, we haven't seen Microsoft move this aggressively too often. We've seen it with Teams, and now we're seeing it with Game Pass, where they are just throwing the kitchen sink at it, and they're going to figure out the rest of the plans later. I think it's a little more nuanced than that. They very clearly have a long-tailed objective with this stuff. But it's only a Monday. Only a Monday. So there's something to pay attention to in the world of Xbox. And this is something I not officially keep track of, but Microsoft, much like every other company, works in a very sort of systematic process, right, of announcing things. And so it's not a coincidence that all this news happened today. It's only a Monday. They dropped all this content. That's great. Makes you kind of wonder like what they have planned for the rest of the week. Microsoft, like many other companies, likes to do things on Tuesday through Thursday. That's typically the best time to do it. And so the fact that all this stuff's out of the way on a Monday leaves a lot of room open for what Microsoft might talk about the rest of the week. I don't have any inside information. It's more of just how Microsoft has been approaching marketing with the Xbox demographic, or the Xbox org, I should say. And business marketing will tell you that Tuesday through Thursday, typically between like 9 a.m. to noon, is a really good time to launch stuff, just because there's a lot of people, a lot of eyeballs, a lot of people sitting at work. Again, so here we are. Anyways, quick wrap up. Whole bunch more games coming to Game Pass. Whole bunch more games of those Bethesda titles are supporting FPS Boost. They're getting Outriders on day one, and Undertale is coming. It's Microsoft going again aggressively in the Game Pass thing. I know I really focus in on Game Pass, but that is Microsoft's long-tailed strategy for gaming, and it's really, really fun to watch. It's really fun to see how they are approaching these challenging problems of the shifting sands in the world of streaming, right? You go watch Netflix, you watch a series, and then you move on. You got to keep moving. And so for Microsoft, they've got to find ways to keep putting fresh content, exactly like what we're talking about today, creating those newsworthy items so that people are optimistic about the plan, or the Game Pass, and that it doesn't become stagnated. So watch for Microsoft to keep, kind of just dribbling things in there so that Game Pass is always bubbling up with fresh, relevant content, because that's what hurts subscription services the most, is becoming stagnated. If you get bored of what's in Game Pass, then you're going to unsubscribe. So they want you to keep you subscribed. Anyways, so that is a wrap up of the massive Monday announcements that Microsoft just keeps throwing out. I actually tried to record this video 2 times, but then they kept announcing things. I recorded initially with the FPS Boost, and then they announced Outriders, and then they announced Undertale. And so this is the 3rd time is the charm. So keep it subscribed here, because the only BS on this channel is me, unless Microsoft announces more stuff on a Monday.